So the Supreme Court in Illinois just found a tax on firearms and ammunition to be unconstitutional. So let's talk about this. But real quick before we jump into this video, if you think that more courts should rule in favor of our Second Amendment rights, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Also, I want to thank one of the new sponsors of the channel, which is Sportsman's Guide. Sportsman's Guide has products in every outdoor category, including hunting, fishing, shooting, camping, apparel, tools, and even has products for your home. They have some of the best brands available on the market at some of the lowest costs. So if you're interested, head on over to Sportsman's Guide, and if you use the code ARM20, you can get $20 off $100. So thank you again, Sportsman's Guide, for supporting this channel. Also, I want to let you know that this content is powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. So head on over to joinfpc.org to help support the Second Amendment cause. Thank you again, Firearms Policy Coalition, for supporting this channel. So like I said in the intro, the Illinois Supreme Court just issued a favorable Second Amendment ruling. This case we're going to be talking about is titled Gun Save Life, Inc. v. Zahara Ali. This case involves a challenge to two tax ordinances imposed by Cook County in the state of Illinois. Now, if you're not familiar, Cook County is the county that is essentially responsible for Chicago. Chicago sits within Cook County, and so it's no surprise that Cook County is very anti-gun, as the city of Chicago is as well. So how this issue all popped up? Well, in 2012, Cook County imposed a $25 tax on all purchases of all firearms within the county. So that is a $25 tax on the purchase of firearms. Then later in 2015, they also passed an ammunition tax. This ammunition tax included a 1 cent per rimfire cartridge, and then there was a 5 cent per centerfire cartridge. So those were those ammunition taxes. And then under these ordinances, the taxes for the ammunition as well as the firearms were going to go into specific funds. For ammunition, they went into the public safety fund, but when it came to the firearms tax, there was never actually a requirement that it go into a specific fund. I guess it just went into a general fund. Now, the plaintiffs in this case challenged those ordinances and claimed that they violated both federal and state constitutional rights to bear arms, that they also violated the state's preemption laws, and then they also claimed that they violated the state's uniformity clause. Now, real quick, let me explain both preemption and uniformity so you have some more clarity on what the courts considered in these cases and what they used as a main point of emphasis when they made their decisions, both the lower courts and then also the Supreme Court in Illinois. So first, let's talk about preemption. Preemption is the use of state laws to nullify local actions. Essentially, a state can pass a statute that says they occupy an entire field of law, here being firearms, and that any local laws that are passed which contradict those state laws become null and void. So essentially the argument in this case is that the tax ordinances are void because the state has a preemption law that says only the state can pass this type of stuff, these types of taxations on firearms or these types of laws in regards to firearms. Now, when it comes to the uniformity clause, the intent is to prevent legislators and local officials from granting preferential tax treatment to property owners, and also the goal is to protect citizens from unequal and unjust taxations. Illinois' uniformity clause states, in any law classifying the subjects or objects of non-property taxes or fees, the classes shall be reasonable and the subjects and objects within each class shall be taxed uniformly. So hopefully that gives you an idea of the two main issues that the lower courts and the Supreme Court here focused on, because they're kind of important. The lower court focused more on preemption, where the state Supreme Court here focused more on the uniformity clause. When the lower courts reviewed this case, they both upheld the taxes based on the Second Amendment context, but also based on state preemption. Well, this case made its way up to the Illinois Supreme Court, and the Illinois Supreme Court in its order ruled that the firearm and ammunition tax ordinances violated the state's uniformity clause. In their ruling, the state court stated, "We agree that the ordinances impose a burden on the exercise of fundamental right protected by the Second Amendment. At its core, the Second Amendment protects the right of law-abiding citizens to keep and bear arms for self-defense in the home. While the taxes do not directly burden a law-abiding citizen's right to use a firearm for self-defense, they do directly burden a law-abiding citizen's right to acquire a firearm and the necessary ammunition for self-defense." So there you have the Illinois Supreme Court saying that this ordinance, this tax, does impact a fundamental right. They then turn to determine what type of analysis should be applied in the uniformity context when a tax is levied against a fundamental right. The court uses a prior marriage tax case, which was established in the state, which they think is informative on this whole issue of taxing a fundamental right and what type of analysis should be used. They state, the court found that imposing a special tax upon the issuance of a marriage license directly impeded the exercise of the fundamental right to marry, and therefore must be subjected to a heightened scrutiny rather than a lesser rational basis test. They then go on to clarify that we are not considering a reasonable regulation on the purchase of firearms or a generally applicable tax on the sale of goods. Instead, the county has singled out the retail purchase of firearms and ammunition as a special object of taxation. Thus, we hold that where a tax classification directly bears on a fundamental right, the government must establish a closer tie between the tax classification and the object of the legislation. To pass scrutiny in that instance, we hold that the tax classification must be substantially related to the object of the legislation. The Supreme Court then concludes by stating, under the plain language of the ordinances, the revenue generated from the firearm tax is not directed to any fund or program specifically related to curbing the cost of gun violence. Additionally, nothing in the ordinance indicates that the proceeds generated from the ammunition tax must be specifically directed to initiatives aimed at reducing gun violence. Thus, we hold the tax ordinances are unconstitutional under the Uniformity Clause. So there the court is striking down the ordinance as it stands because it impacts the Second Amendment, and in doing so, the county's actions must be substantially related to achieving their so-called goal of reducing gun violence. However, the county was not taking those taxes and putting them into funds related to so-called gun violence or reducing so-called gun violence. Instead, they were just throwing them into general public interest funds and just general funds. And so that program that they were putting into and those taxes were not directly tied or substantially related to that whole interest and those taxes that they were levying. Now, this is a good decision, but there is also a big flaw in this ruling, which is actually outlined in Justice Burke's concurring opinion in this case. Essentially, the court did not go far enough in striking this case down on a Second Amendment ground. He goes on to state in his concurring opinion that, I believe that the majority's analysis wrongly leaves the door open for a municipality to enact a future tax on firearms or ammunition that is more narrowly tailored to the purpose of ameliorating the cost of gun violence. The only problem with that approach is that it would still violate the Illinois Constitution. So he's saying that the county may think, after looking at the majority's opinion, that all they have to do is pass a new ordinance of this type against firearms and ammunition and just allocate all those taxes, all those funds directly into a so-called gun violence prevention program. However, he's saying here in his opinion, even if the county does that, it would still be a violation of federal 2A rights and constitutional 2A rights under the state constitution. So he's saying the court kind of misguided the county a little bit here because the county may think they have a green light to still do this type of thing, but that is a big error. And the big error really is on the part of the Supreme Court here because they stopped at the Uniformity Clause. So it's a good win, but I myself wish the Supreme Court of Illinois would have went further in actually addressing that Second Amendment context, but it's still a good step in the right direction. So if you guys have any questions, go and comment down below and I'll try to answer the best of my ability. Also, if you like this video and like support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, and subscribe. All those things help to fuel the algorithm or fuel Al Gore's rhythm. It adds fuel to his jet and it signals to YouTube that you guys see value in these videos, in this type of 2A news, and then it helps push it to more people. So thank you so much to everybody who's liked, commented, subscribed, who's hit the notification bell. Thank you guys so much for all your support. You guys are directly impacting these videos, impacting this channel, and helping to get this news out to more people. So thank you so much for doing that. If you don't have a comment in mind, just comment down below that you're coming to fuel the algorithm. And also, if you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. I am marching towards my 200,000 subscriber goal by the end of the year. I never thought I would reach that, but because of all of you guys, that's looking like it may happen before the end of this year. So thank you so much. And as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And never forget, this is Built by Arm Scholars, and the station we maintain by Arm Scholars.